going live real quick because I felt the need to share with you all two of the biggest lessons that I learned during my journey with failed relationships. Uh, Now, of course, they typically say you don't need to put a disclaimer, but I feel like I do need to put a disclaimer. I'm learning that the cheap saying that it's not you, it's me is definitely clearer as I go and work on some of the things about myself that needs to be improved, right? But I wrote it down here just so that I could stay and stick to the script a little bit. But one of the things that I know, if anybody knows, I have a history of failed relationships, and you're probably familiar with one of my philosophies that out of your misery will be birth your ministry. So that's why typically I have a desire to be relational, connecting, and all other relationships that I do. And but one of the interesting things that reminds me of like the whole separation and divorce, like we tend to have to learn or begin to practice the things that we should have been doing at the end of the relationship all throughout the relationship. We should have been doing these things. And one of the things that I had to learn at the end of the relationship after 4.5 years was that um, I had to learn how to be happy for the person even when I'm not in their life, right? And that was a huge thing for me because in that moment it was like a aha moment or a clarity moment, but it also was a moment of self awareness. Some people would take it. I went through a form of condemnation at that point in time because I realized that I was only happy as long as Denard was the catalyst for that person's happiness, right? And what I learned along the journey is that happiness, true happiness, is not a person; it's a process. It's not an event. It's our opportunity to walk through life and learn more about ourselves. So happiness is not one of those, like I said in a previous post. And this milestone we call life is just mile markers, right? And so it's important to understand that it's a lifelong process where you're gonna find yourself, you're gonna lose yourself, but the ultimate goal is to continue to search for it. For my believers, the Bible says it this way: that the joy of the Lord is your strength, right? Or one of my favorite verses, Philippians 4, verse 6 through 7. It says, "Be not anxious for anything, but in everything through prayer and with supplication, let all your requests be made known unto God. And the peace of God that surpasses all understanding will guard your heart and your mind." And interestingly enough, in relationships, especially failed relationships, those are the two things that tend to go astray. It's the jostling and the battle between the heart and the mind, where you stay longer in a relationship than you know the reason why, and or you pray about things in the relationship and you don't know, and actually answers start to pass you by, right? So the important thing at this point in time is to learn that true happiness is a process, not a person, right? And the other thing that I took note of is this is transferable from personal to professional. Um, you never make what you're doing more important than the person you're doing it with. And I tend to call these type of relationships like TikTok or real relationships, not the REAL, but REEL, because your attention span only lasts as long as you're willing to watch it, right? Or you get caught up in trying to make a moment than actually live in the moment. In social work and also psychology, most of these um, practices and theoretical frameworks, they tend to tell you that one of the things most struggle with in a fear of missing out, or in a society where it's the next best thing, people tend to not be able to be present in the moment, searching for the proper caption, the proper title to say about their relationship, instead of recognizing that what's important is what's in front of you, right? And so I had to learn that the very hard way, that because relationships take years to build, but they can be gone in seconds. And that's because what's important doesn't remain important. And then when you make time for what's important, what's in front of you, you're not present. And so, two big lessons. It's pretty simple, but the moral of the story is that I'm not an expert, right? But what I can tell you is what not to do. So yes, I do marriage and family counseling, yes. I'm a prepare, enrich facilitator, yes. I do group facilitation on relationships, but the most important thing that I want people to remember is that this thing is not linear, it's not reiterative, it's not something that you can, it's not, there's no perfect equation to it, but it's progressive. And as long as you're willing to learn from your lessons, you can grow. And one of my definitions of maturity is one's willingness to grow, right? And so, in my newfound relationship, one of the questions that people started to ask me, which in marrying my wife, June 17th of 2018, her name is Olda Fanad. See, I was at that point in time very transitioning from superficial to supernatural things, and I talk more about it because the question was, so what's your story? How do you know that this is the one, and how do you know you got a good one? And so I think learning these things beforehand and throughout your current relationships or the relationships you're about to enter in, and also recognizing that even if you're single, you're in a relationship with yourself. The point of relationships is to draw nigh to the critical points in yourself that to reflect outwardly so that you can grow. So these are growth pains, these are growth opportunities that when you're in relationship, whether you're in a group setting, whether you're in one a monogamous relationship, whether you're actually in one by yourself, the goal is to be not critiquing but critical, looking with an eye of scrutiny to see progressively each day where are the areas in my life that I can grow. And for me, those two areas became very important as I transitioned into the professional realm. It helped me learning that my happiness is not contingent upon being a catalyst for someone else's happiness. Helped me to remove some of the strains and recognize that I don't have to be the person that creates happiness for other people. So, and that helped me also when in my professional career, and the things that I'm now learning on my journey is that I can overcome my ego by celebrating others in an authentic way, right? Through altruistic affirmation, through celebrating other people, not just for what they're doing, but simply for who they are. And these things started to transfer back into my my current relationship because I'm not married to Olda because of the titles that she holds in our relationship, simply because she's my wife, simply because she's the mother of Canaan and our soon-to-be son in 6 weeks, Zion. It's because of who she is. You know, Olda is a God-fearing, intellectually, beyond sound intellectually person. She is beautiful inside and out. Olda is someone that is patient enough to sit in the silence with you in your pain. So Olda is who she is, and that's more than enough. So for anyone that's listening to this, these two lessons that I learned helped me to realize that I'm more than enough, and you are enough. And so just as my line brother Calvin had shared the other day, when we were talking and just catching up, and while we were pouring into one of our colleagues who lost a loved one, we had to recognize that the depth of the relationship in which he lost, why he's grieving so much, is because it's a love loss, but there's also love gained when you start to recognize that the lessons learned may feel like they're lasting longer than the person in your life. The memories that you have about the person may feel like they're lasting longer than the person in your life. But what can you learn from those lessons? And that's what I had to learn through some difficult moments and some difficult times. So one, I don't believe anyone is meant to be alone. Two, I believe that anything good is meant to be shared. So our next time I'll chat about what's the story, how did I know Olda was the one and is the one and should always be the one. And as you all leave, I would tell you one thing I learned in my prayer, and as I depart myself, because I gotta go, I had to learn that I was praying for a wife when God was providing for me the mother of my child. See, sometimes we're only praying for our immediate need, but God sees longer and further, and he desires more for us, essentially. That's what I'm trying to say. And so I want to talk about that next time we chat. But again, the two biggest lessons I learned is that my happiness, or I should be happy for individuals despite being in a relationship with them. So I don't necessarily have to be the catalyst for their happiness, and I should also be able to celebrate their happiness. And then the second thing I need to learn I learned how to do was never make what's important or what I'm doing more important than the people that I'm doing it with. Whether you're doing this professionally or personally, this is a tool, a principle to have in mind, because people are important. People are valuable. And if anyone knows one of my purpose in life, it's to eradicate suicidal ideation. And for those that are struggling, for those that are alone, for those that feel hopeless or helpless, remember that you are loved. Remember that you can choose to be alone, but loneliness is the emptiness and uncertainty of the bottomless pit of the lie from the enemy, that goes contrary to the promise of God that do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, that he will never leave nor forsake us. All right, peoples, I'm out. Peace. Oh yeah, we in Florida, by the way. Sure. All right, let's end this.